I'll never forget the way my aunt, Linda, looked me in the eye at Thanksgiving 2 years ago and said, "You'll never amount to anything, Rose. You're too poor to matter." Everyone at the table went silent, except for the sound of my little cousin choking on laughter. My mother's face went pale, her hands trembling around her fork. I wanted to sink into the floor, but instead I forced myself to swallow my pride along with the lump in my throat. I was 22, broke, still in college, working 2 part-time jobs, and yes, living paycheck to paycheck. But she didn't have to say it like that. She didn't have to humiliate me in front of everyone. I remember gripping my napkin so hard that my nails tore holes in it. My aunt smirked like she'd won something, like putting me down was her victory of the night. She had the biggest house in town, drove a shiny Lexus, and loved reminding people she married up. I hated her in that moment, hated how she turned her fork into a weapon sharper than any knife. I went home that night and cried until my chest hurt, but somewhere between the tears, a fire lit inside me, a silent vow, one day, I'd prove her wrong. I grew up with very little. My mom raised me alone after my dad left, and we scraped by on her nurse's salary. I wasn't ashamed of it. I wore thrift store clothes with pride, learned to stretch $1 until it begged for mercy, and worked harder than anyone I knew. But to Aunt Linda, being poor was a disease. She treated us like we were beneath her. I was always the charity case niece. When I was a kid, she'd give me her daughter's old clothes and trash bags and make a show of it. "At least you'll have something decent to wear, Rose." Her tone was always cutting, like I should bow down and thank her. By the time I got to college, I was determined to break the cycle. I double majored in finance and computer science, juggled tutoring jobs, and taught myself about investing. I'd sit in my cramped dorm with ramen and instant coffee, devouring books about money and markets while other students partied. Every time exhaustion hit me, I heard her voice, "You'll never matter." It was fuel, bitter fuel, but it burned hot. I didn't want her approval, I wanted her silence. Family gatherings became a battlefield. My aunt always had something snide to say, and the rest of the family either laughed awkwardly or ignored it. My mom tried to defend me, but Linda's sharp tongue cut deeper every time. At my cousin's birthday party, she looked me up and down and said loudly, "Still driving that old beater, huh? Don't worry, maybe one day a man will rescue you." I clenched my teeth so hard I thought they'd crack. My cousin, wearing designer sneakers I knew cost more than my rent, snickered. I started avoiding family events, choosing instead to grind in silence. I worked internships nobody else wanted, learned coding late into the night, and picked up freelance gigs. I wasn't just chasing stability, I was chasing freedom, the freedom to never need people like her. The family thought I was antisocial. They didn't know I was building something. My savings account slowly grew, then my investment portfolio. By 24, I had a modest but growing income from freelance work and side hustles. By 25, I had my first real breakthrough, a software contract that paid me more in a month than I'd ever seen in a year. But I told no one, not even my mom, not yet. The breaking point came last Christmas. I decided to show up for the first time in months, mostly for my mom's sake. I wore a simple but nice dress, nothing flashy. The moment I walked in, Aunt Linda gave me her trademark smirk. Well, if it isn't little Miss Hand-to-Mouth," she said, swirling her wine. "Did you finally crawl out of whatever hole you're living in?" Everyone laughed nervously. My mom looked like she wanted to disappear. I smiled, even though my hands shook. "I'm doing fine, Aunt Linda." She leaned closer across the table. "Face it, Rose, people like us succeed. People like you survive. There's a difference." That night, when I got home, I made a decision. I wasn't just going to prove her wrong. I was going to crush her arrogance in a way she'd never forget. Here's the thing about arrogance, it blinds people. Linda and her husband had been flaunting their lifestyle for years, but beneath the glitter was rot, debt, overspending. Their marriage was cracking, though she hid it with diamonds and Botox. I kept tabs quietly, not because I cared, but because I knew opportunity lived in shadows. When the housing market shifted, I learned through a cousin that Linda's husband had gambled away part of their savings. Rumors swirled that they were behind on payments. I stayed silent, working harder, funneling money into smart investments, crypto, stocks, real estate flips, risky, but calculated. I lived cheaply, socked away every cent, and within 2 years I had enough liquid cash to do something bold. One morning, scrolling through listings, my heart stopped. There it was, Aunt Linda's house, for sale. It felt surreal walking through the open house, the same marble foyer where she once told me I'd never matter, the same chandelier she loved bragging about. Except now, the place felt hollow. Staged furniture, echoes in empty rooms. I played the part of the curious buyer, hiding my shaking hands behind a clipboard. The realtor gushed about the luxury property, clearly unaware of the irony. By the end of the week, I made an offer, in cash. No mortgage, no hesitation. My lawyer handled the details, but when the call came, "Congratulations, the house is yours," I nearly collapsed. The next step was the best part, moving day. I didn't tell a soul, not my mom, not my friends. I wanted to savor the reveal. The day I got the keys, I drove up to the house in my same old car. The irony wasn't lost on me. My aunt happened to be outside, loading boxes into her Lexus. Her face drained of color when she saw me with the realtor, holding paperwork. "Rose, what are you doing here?" she stammered. I smiled, heart pounding. "Oh, didn't they tell you? I just bought this place, paid in cash." The silence that followed was delicious. My aunt's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. You're lying," she finally spat. "You couldn't afford this house. Not you." The realtor cheerfully chimed in. "Oh, it's true. Miss Rose here is our newest homeowner." Linda's face went red, then purple. "This is ridiculous. You buying my house?" I leaned against the car, savoring every second. "I guess I wasn't too poor to matter after all," she sputtered, gripping the Lexus door handle like it was the last piece of dignity she had left. For once, she had no comeback, no cruel quip, just stunned silence. That night, I invited my mom over. She walked through the house, eyes wide, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Rose, how? When?" I finally told her everything, my late nights, my side hustles, my investments. She hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. "I'm proud of you, not because of this house, but because you never let her break you." We ate takeout on the marble kitchen counters, laughing. It felt like a full-circle moment. Word spread through the family fast. Cousins texted me in disbelief, some congratulating, others gossiping. Aunt Linda avoided me at every event after that. She couldn't look me in the eye. The queen had fallen from her throne, and the girl she mocked now owned her castle. But here's the thing, revenge felt sweet. Yes, but it wasn't everything. After the high wore off, I realized it wasn't about crushing her, it was about proving to myself that I was capable, that I mattered, regardless of her opinion. The first night I officially slept in that house, I didn't sleep at all. I wandered from room to room barefoot, letting my fingers trail along the polished banisters, the cool marble counters, the enormous windows that framed the city lights. The house was quiet, too quiet. Not the silence of peace, but the silence of absence. Of rooms that had once been filled with my aunt's sharp laughter, her shrill voice bragging about vacations and handbags, the clinking of wine glasses she never let anyone else touch. Now it was mine. I should have felt victorious, like I'd finally won. But what I actually felt was complicated. My chest was tight, my thoughts racing, my emotions colliding. Yes, I was proud of myself, proud that I had clawed my way here, without shortcuts, without anyone rescuing me, proud that I had proven wrong every cruel word she ever spat at me. But underneath the pride was something else, a strange, almost hollow ache. Revenge feels sharp in the moment, like a blade sliding clean through. But once the blade is sheathed, what remains is just the wound. I sat in the living room, her old living room, the one where she once mocked my thrift store dress, and stared at the chandelier. It glittered like it always had, but now it felt different. When she owned it, it was a symbol of superiority, her trophy to hang above us all. In my eyes, it wasn't a trophy anymore. It was just glass and light, beautiful, yes, but meaningless without the people beneath it. That was the realization that hit me hardest. The house wasn't the victory. The victory was me choosing not to stay broken when it would have been so easy. When my mom came over that weekend, I watched her run her hand along the same counters I had touched days earlier. Her expression was a mixture of pride and disbelief, as though she couldn't reconcile the little girl she raised with the woman who stood before her now. "Rose," she whispered, tears already forming, "do you realize what you've done?" I thought she meant the house, but when she pulled me into her arms and said, "You built yourself a life out of nothing. You refused to let her words define you," I realized she saw it more clearly than I did. It wasn't about marble floors or a sprawling backyard. It was about resilience. We sat on the floor that night, eating greasy takeout because I hadn't bought furniture yet. My mom told me stories I'd never heard before, how she used to cry quietly after Linda's visits, how she had once pawned her wedding ring just to pay for my school shoes, how she always feared I'd grow up feeling less than. I listened with my heart in my throat. For years, I had thought I was carrying this burden of proving myself alone, but I wasn't. She carried it with me, every single day, in ways I hadn't even seen. I think that's when I stopped thinking of the house as revenge. Because revenge centers on the person who hurt you, but growth centers on yourself and the people you love. Still, I won't lie to you, it was sweet. That moment when I told Linda I bought her house in cash, that memory will always taste like honey on my tongue. But the sweetness of that moment is fleeting. What lasts is the quiet strength that came after, the peace of walking through rooms no longer haunted by her voice, the peace of knowing I rose above her cruelty. Over the following months, I started reshaping the house, not with expensive decor or status symbols, but with warmth. I painted the walls myself, not caring that my brushstrokes weren't perfect. I turned one of the guest rooms into a library filled with secondhand books, because as a kid I used to dream of having a room like that. I planted flowers in the front yard with my mom, both of us laughing when our knees got muddy. The house became a home not through money, but through love, the very thing it had always been missing under her ownership. Linda avoided me at family gatherings, which, honestly, was its own kind of gift. I could see in her eyes that she was still furious, still humiliated, but she never dared say another cruel word. It was as though she finally realized that I wasn't the timid little niece she could toy with. I had become untouchable, not because of my wealth, but because I no longer cared what she thought. And that's the real freedom, not the money, not the house, but the unshakable truth that her opinion meant nothing. I used to fantasize about rubbing my success in her face, about crafting the perfect cutting remark to throw her words back at her, but as time passed, I didn't need to. Her silence was enough. My existence, my thriving, was enough. Sometimes, though, I catch myself reflecting on her cruelty. Why did she hate me so much? Why did she need to remind me I was too poor to matter? I've come to believe it wasn't about me at all. It was about her, her insecurities, her desperation to feel superior, her fear that without her house and her diamonds, she was nothing, and maybe she was right. But here's what I've learned: when someone tells you don't matter, what they're really doing is projecting their own emptiness onto you. They want to shrink you so they don't have to face the smallness of their own soul. I matter, not because I bought her house, but because I survived her cruelty without becoming cruel myself, because I built a life not out of spite, but out of determination, because I chose growth over bitterness. If there's one thing I'd tell anyone listening to my story, it's this: don't chase revenge thinking it will heal you. It won't. The thrill fades fast. What stays is the person you've become in the process. Let the insults fuel you. Yes, let the doubters ignite your fire, but don't give them power forever. At some point, you have to let go, not for them, but for you. I used to think the sweetest moment of my life would be when I saw Linda's face as I told her the house was mine. And yes, it was satisfying, but the real sweetest moment? Sitting on the floor with my mom, eating noodles out of takeout boxes, laughing until our stomachs hurt, surrounded by walls that once echoed with cruelty but now echoed with love. That's what mattered. That's what made me free. So here's my moral, the one I hope you take with you after hearing this: your worth isn't determined by anyone else's judgment. Success isn't about proving people wrong, it's about proving yourself right. And the best revenge isn't buying someone's house or silencing their insults. The best revenge is living so fully, so freely, that their words can't touch you anymore. Because at the end of the day, revenge fades, but freedom lasts forever.